In the College of Liberal Arts at Auburn University, we value the pursuit of knowledge because the world is more than just technology and material things. We employ innovative thinking, bold conversations, and creative actions that are necessary for careers in the 21st century. We work alongside some of the most successful business and industry leaders, and our faculty researchers are working to solve real-life issues. We respect people from all backgrounds with unique perspectives and experiences, which broadens our understanding of the world. We lead with the ability to look at situations from all angles and possess the distinctive desire to leave the world better than we found it.
Everything we do in the College of Liberal Arts.
Everyone that passes through our halls.
Every class taught, every impact we have on the world shapes our future.
We are the new definition of liberal arts.
We're the leaders of it.
And we own it together.
Research and creative activity in the College of Liberal Arts is an $8.2 million enterprise with over 400 faculty researchers pursuing solutions to some of society's toughest issues.
As a public historian, I'm really interested in historic preservation. The project I'm working on now is in collaboration with researchers in the College of Architecture, Design, and Construction, using advanced imaging tools to digitally recreate the events of Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama. As we use these images to recreate the scene of the march, I am looking at historic photographs and limited video footage from that time to understand how people moved through the area on that day. We are also working on identifying marchers to create the first comprehensive list of the brave souls that crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This is the kind of scholarship that makes a land-grant institution special. We are bringing to bear all of our talents and resources to enrich the lives of the people in Selma, the faculty and students at Auburn University, as well as those who will visit this historic site in the future. We're creating a more compelling and accurate story to show exactly what happened and how it happened on Bloody Sunday.
Right now, I'm working on an interdisciplinary project with a team of systems engineers at the University of Rhode Island. We are looking at how elections are affected by crises like COVID-19. Our goal is to create continuity of service models for elections. We want to make sure election administrators have the tools to continue their critical work in both a legal and ethical way, while also incorporating the best practices from systems engineering to make the process as smooth as possible for voters.
My work has taken me from the stage at the Gogue Center in Auburn to the Kennedy Center in our nation's capital and to concert halls across 4 continents. As a pianist, I'm honored to have been selected as an international Steinway performing artist. Both as a soloist and together in collaboration with my colleagues at Auburn, I have released 3 CDs on major classical record labels. I also often work with living composers to prepare and interpret their works for performance.
Over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw the importance of a clear and actionable guidelines from the federal government, particularly the CDC. A study I just completed looks at ways to predict public support for taking action during a public health crisis. The study provides practical suggestions for communicators to consider as they prepare messaging that needs to drive action in emergency situations.
Our faculty define innovation, from performing on the biggest stages to helping protect our most important civic duty. College of Liberal Arts faculty are redefining how we understand, connect with, and experience the world.
Welcome to a live streaming celebration of research and creativity in the College of Liberal Arts. I'm Brandon Etheridge, host of the Things You Didn't Know Research podcast. Over the next several hours, we will explore the pioneering research, making advancements and discoveries at Auburn that will improve people's lives and make our world a better place. We will see the creative work that is changing the way we look at and appreciate the world around us. And we will hear about the future of scholarly work at Auburn and opportunities to expand research in the college and around campus. Across the arts, humanities, social and behavioral sciences, and communication, nearly 500 faculty members are generating unique ideas, meaningful advancements, masterful works of art, music, and theater, and are contributing to the unique fabric that makes a major research organization like Auburn what it is. As an R1 institution, the research and creative activity undertaken in the College of Liberal Arts is critical to the ongoing success of our research enterprise. As we move throughout the day and this celebration, we will hear and learn from researchers and leaders across campus with important discoveries and information for the CLA community. We'll start this morning with a discussion on the state of research and creativity in the college. We'll also hear musical performances, theater productions, research talks, and information about how your research could connect across the Auburn research enterprise. With that, let's begin our day together. The scholarly work conducted in the College of Liberal Arts is important. The success of the research enterprise in this college is critical to the success of research across campus. In his first video address to the College of Liberal Arts community, Dean Jason Hicks noted that the research enterprise is a priority for his administration as he begins his tenure at Auburn.
Another part of this is really making sure that we continue on our upward trajectory in research. So the research enterprise is really important to the university. We have a very wide range of different ways in which our faculty and students create scholarship, creative activity. So when I say research enterprise, that sometimes means, grant funding, but it doesn't mean that for all departments or for all people. It's also thinking about where do you find the best opportunities to support the kind of work that you do for your own research on scholarship or creative work. So it's focusing on that and bringing faculty to those resources and students to those resources that will enable them to do that really well, right? So that's, I think, a major piece of that I want to focus on.
Joining us now to kick off the morning and dive deeper into the state of research and creativity in the college is the new Dean of the College of Liberal Arts, Dr. Jason Hicks. Dr. Hicks, welcome to Auburn and to the 2022 celebration of research and creativity.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, you've been with us just over 100 days. As you've acclimated to the college and your position, how would you describe the state of research and creativity across the College of Liberal Arts?
So I think the state of research and creative activity is really strong, and also one in which I'm still learning all of our sort of opportunities, the different kind of recognitions that faculty and students are garnering. We went through, for example, last week a recognition ceremony for endowed professorships, which is really exciting. So I can see there's a lot of activity going on in the college, but also getting an assessment of where we do maybe have some gaps and opportunities, which I think are probably real. And the question is, where can we put resources to bear from the college especially to help support those research and creative activity efforts for all the faculty.
One of your 4 priorities is elevating the research enterprise in the college and connecting faculty to resources to make them successful. What does that look like, and how will we accomplish this?
Yeah, so I think, some of this relates to how do we get faculty in touch with resources at the university level, so institutionally what's available. Our Office of Research does a great job providing lots of resources for faculty in that regard. But then also, how does the college support that same level of research or more, especially to maybe fill in some of the gaps or opportunities that are not available at the institutional level or that are extremely competitive, right? So we think about, for example, time that it takes for people on a tenure track to achieve tenure and promotion, the kind of research and scholarship and creative work that is needed to pass that bar. And that often means needing to spend extra time and attention to one's research activities or creative activities and needing the space to do that. So there are often incentives provided by either the college or a department for maybe a little bit of time off of teaching in one semester so that they can dedicate more time to a particular project. The professional improvement leave program that the university supports is a great example of that at the university level. We at the college want to try to make sure we're also supporting something like that at the college level, especially for those that might have projects that, for whatever reason, aren't eligible for the funding at the institutional level or otherwise. So we need to think about where can we provide those resources in a timely fashion to help folks in those efforts. See, part of their work as a faculty member is to do research and creative works, and so we want to make sure that they've got all the resources, time, and space to do that.
How does CLA research from the arts and humanities to communication and the social and behavioral sciences fit into our R1 status and the overall research mission of the institution? And as we look to solve these grand challenges, where do our people fit into that?
Yeah, so I think first of all, I would say that we're actually very integral to that. I think when people think of R1 status, sometimes they think of, that's STEM and that's science and that's many of the things that we're not in the College of Liberal Arts. First of all, I would say to that we are some of that, of course, in the Liberal Arts College, especially in social sciences and other areas. But what's important to know is that for an R1 institution, arts and humanities is actually extremely important. Part of the, in fact, formula that is used to recognize an institution as an R1 status involves research output, creative output, doctoral degree output from humanities and arts programs, very clearly. So it's actually an important part of that process. So we need to make sure that our college, because it's so diverse in its disciplinary work, right, from arts, humanities, social sciences, and everything in between, that we have the ability to support that work no matter what its sort of flavor or the way it's operationalized, right, within the college. So it's important for us to have a real diverse array of strategies to support that, knowing that the university relies on that. You know, we can't, for example, just go dormant in the area of humanities and expect the university to maintain an R1 status. That's just not going to happen. So it's a real thing that is involved in the university's sort of DNA, and we need to make sure that we sort of keep that going and energize that wherever we can.
As we talk about research and creative scholarship, how does academic freedom and the ability of faculty to conduct their work freely play into this conversation?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So in anyone's research and creative activity sort of agenda or priorities, it's important that they have the time and space, as I mentioned before, but also to tackle the kind of ideas and concepts and activities that they desire. They are interested in often what to the public might seem very obscure, narrow research topics, but to the faculty, and I'm an example of that, this freedom allows us to pursue those without worrying that someone else is going to say, well, that's not worth funding, or that's not worth our time and effort, or that's not what the university should be focusing on. It's up to the faculty to determine that. So this is really part of that sort of self and governance and also sort of self-determination about the research. The faculty know what research is viable because they also have some sort of checks and balances in the external world around them. I mean, funding agencies will fund certain things and not others, and that often sort of drives a direction that someone maybe in the sciences might go in, or they may need to think more carefully about how the research has broader impacts to the community or to the world. But at the core, the idea is that I can sort of go after research topic for me in human memory in whatever way I see fit, because I know that there is a market for that of other scientists of a similar discipline that are going to help me evaluate whether that's worth anything. I mean, the peer review process, that sort of validation of one's work, that's where we see the validation, and not in what idea is pursued in the first place. So when I sort of allow that real generous time and space to pursue ideas, even if they're potentially controversial to the public, that's okay, because we're giving people time and space in an environment that helps protect their ability to do that, and try to gain resources and time to pursue those activities as well. And as long as they're successful in doing that, we want to continue encouraging that.
Let's talk about students and the research enterprise. Many faculty rely on student research assistants at the graduate and undergraduate level. How important are students to the research mission of campus, and how do we build upon the current programming to create more opportunities for students to engage in research?
It's a great question, and to get to the first point, they're extremely important. So, and I'll speak from my own sort of experience as a psychology professor. A research lab that I ran in human memory relied on student research assistants. So that's both at the graduate and the undergraduate level. So it's important to have lots of opportunities for students, especially at the undergraduate level, to plug into those research activities. They have an almost unique opportunity to be involved in research at an institution where people are doing the work and the creative activity that people talk about in textbooks, right? We're generating that kind of activity and output, and we can really get the students involved in that. So we need to create opportunities for that. One way that we do that is many of our departments have research hours, so credit hours a student can take to sign up to get independent study credit or research-based credit to work under the supervision of a faculty mentor or on an independent project. So that's one way that we try to make sure we have opportunities and that also go toward the student's degree, right? The other thing is that we want to support research activity irrespective of that. So what kind of incentives are there for students to work in laboratories, to get support otherwise for their own work? They may want to present research at conferences or otherwise. So I also wanted to say that the Office of Research at Auburn has an undergraduate research sort of arm of that office that supports campus-wide these kind of research activities. We have anywhere from 10 to 14 or so students in this college that are involved in research activities that is supported financially and otherwise by Auburn University more generally. We can also sort of do that within the college itself. So it's kind of the same principle that we use for faculty. There are general resources available at the university level, but those are limited, and we also want to make sure that the college is doing whatever we can to support that as well. So we've got these opportunities within departments to identify mentors for thesis kind of works, undergraduate thesis projects, to plug into laboratory kinds of research, and to be mentored in other ways, such as with creative activities and those kind of works as well. So we want to create a space for students to be able to plug into that research activity and benefit from it. They may use that to their benefit if they're applying to graduate programs down the line or going into any kind of an industry or career. That kind of practical research experience or creative activity experience for them is extremely important.
You come from a science background, your home department is psychological sciences. How do you view the creative activity as research across the college?
So it's interesting, creative activity as research is important. In a very personal way, I can tell you that some of my own research in human memory on the topic of unconscious plagiarism relates to creative activity. Creative modes of activity are one place that people are prone to unconscious plagiarism, in fact. So I was always open as even a graduate student at the time thinking about how do we use memory in many different modes of life and in our own lives, and all of that sort of dovetails with any way that we express our human behavior, including creative activity. So I had an appreciation for that, even from that sort of more scientific lens. I think what I've learned more since being in a humanities and social science and arts kind of environment is appreciating that for its own sake. The disciplinary work of creative activity, for example, like anything else in research and scholarship, what really buttresses that kind of work is peer review, recognition by peers in other institutions, in other spaces, understanding how that is actually what makes the sort of bottom line or the common denominator for all the work we do, whether it's creative activity versus more science-based work. It all comes down to whether it's being recognized by our peers in these disciplinary domains that sort of say, yep, that is awesome, valuable work. We're going to endorse it. We're going to give you an award for that, or we're going to invite you to speak at a conference for that. And creative activity is a key part of that as well. So I think we recognize that both in its own right, but also how we see its intersection with other modes of research.
As we close, where do we go from here? As the faculty return to their research and creative work, how do we become preeminent and exemplar for other liberal arts colleges?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some of this is recognizing where we do have gaps and challenges and making sure we're filling those in. Some of that's about monetary support or the space and time I kind of mentioned earlier. But it's also how do we elevate some of that? So some of this is that we have opportunities that maybe we're not really reaching within our own college. So are there grant opportunities or funding opportunities or fellowship opportunities for faculty that we really should be sort of pointing them toward or helping them achieve. So if we give them resources in that time and space, but also help them professionally. So professional development is really kind of the general term for this, is how do we get them to those places where we can help them help themselves, but also have the college help those faculty directly with that kind of support. Some of this is about infrastructure we have. We've got great infrastructure in the college to support grant and fellowship application opportunities, where we're notifying faculty of their availability, helping support their effort in writing those and budgeting for them when in the case of a grant that requires a budget. So we want to make sure we have infrastructure that's available for that to continue going forward. The other point I would make there is we want to make sure that we're also doing what we can to understand where's the university's vision going in this regard. So where does CLA fit within the other kind of big research priorities that are available and that the university is looking at, sometimes regionally? The SEC as a conference is often looking at certain kind of research initiatives like cybersecurity and artificial intelligence is one right now that's big out there. And we've got departments that can kind of plug into those activities as well. So that's all part of what we need to do, but it's more about getting people to those resources and also doing it in a broad fashion rather than just waiting for the faculty among themselves to sort of self-select into those spaces. We need to help support them and get them into those spaces.
Dr. Hicks, thank you for joining us and for the work you're doing across the college.
Sure, appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here.
Ensuring that research generated in the college can be disseminated to, understood by, and acted upon in the practitioner community is critical to the advancement of the college's reputation as a thought leader that generates important and actionable insights to support the mission of the college. For that reason, we launched a new podcast, Things You Didn't Know, hosted by yours truly in the spring of 2021. Since its launch, thousands of unique listeners from over 35 countries have tuned in and learned what they didn't know about topics ranging the spectrum of research happening in the college. As we continue our celebration of research and creativity, we head to the Department of Psychological Sciences with CLA researcher Dr. Tiffany Brown. Research has found that men make up about 33% of eating disorder cases, and over recent years have faced escalating social pressures to become unrealistically lean and muscular. However, few programs have been developed to address the needs of men struggling with eating disorders. But work happening now at Auburn University stands to bring new treatments to this often hidden issue. Welcome to a special episode of the Things You Didn't Know podcast, part of our celebration of research and creativity. I'm Brandon Etheridge, and I'm joined today by Dr. Tiffany Brown. Dr. Brown is an assistant professor of psychological sciences at Auburn University, where she studies prevention and treatment of body image and eating disorders, specifically focusing on the LGBTQ+ community, gender differences, and the relationship between brain and body. Her recent work, which is funded in part by the Arlene and Michael Rosen Foundation, stands to disrupt the issue of eating disorders in the male and LGBTQ+ populations and give new tools in the fight against body image issues across the country. Dr. Brown, thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you note in your research that eating disorders and muscular dysmorphia have not received a lot of attention from researchers. Give us an idea of how big of a problem we're dealing with here and what eating disorders and muscle dysmorphia actually look like in the population that you study.
Yeah, so I think culturally we have this sort of idea that when we hear the word eating disorders, we tend to think about a probably young, thin, white, cisgender, straight, maybe wealthy woman, but really eating disorders don't discriminate across kind of any demographic lines. And so we know that eating disorders affect people of all genders, sexual orientations, body sizes, ages, SES, race and ethnicity. And so kind of relevant to the work that I've done, that does include populations of men and then also LGBTQ+ folks. And within data, like you mentioned, there's really, unfortunately, a lot of the research has overlooked these populations in prior work, which has kind of been correcting, which is really encouraging. So we really do need more data. But in terms of conservative estimates of prevalence for eating disorders, we see that about 2.8% of men will have an eating disorder in their lifetime, which, you know, overall doesn't sound like a really big issue. But if you kind of apply that to the general population, we see that that equates to about 4.5 million men just in the United States alone that will have an eating disorder in their lifetime. And again, that's a conservative estimate because it doesn't include a lot of kind of eating disorder diagnoses that do tend to affect men more often. And I would say that overall, in terms of eating disorder presentations, I won't go into details just for time's sake about all of the different eating disorder presentations, but eating disorders in men can look very similar to eating disorders in women. They can also look rather different as well, and that makes it often pretty common that they're under-detected and under kind of identified in men. And what they could look like could be a variety of presentations, but it could be a man who has a really strict kind of eating or exercise-related pattern. So it could be avoiding certain types of foods, maybe that are high in fat or high in sugar, and tending to overconsume things like protein in a way that actually can be quite unhealthy for the body. Could be, having concerns about body weight and shape, but also could be concerns about muscularity, and we'll talk more about that, I know. Could also be, going long periods of time without eating, might experience binge eating episodes where people will have a loss of control and eat a large amount of food, and then might compensate for those behaviors as well with either fasting, so going long periods of time without eating, exercising for a long period of time, or in like a driven or compelled way. And more rarely, although it does happen in men, could also include doing things to compensate for food intake, like vomiting, laxative use, diuretics as well. But the key there is really what differentiates an eating disorder from just like problematic eating would be distress and impairment. So either being really bothered about these behaviors and or having some sort of impact on your life. So either your social relationships, your ability to do school, if men are exercising in the middle of the night and you're spending a lot of time at the gym, they might not have time for class. That might interfere with their concentration and ability to do well in classes. And same thing for work or other kind of personal relationships too. And then another kind of, phenomenon that you mentioned, muscle dysmorphia, is a lot less well known, and actually technically is not an eating disorder. It's classified as a subtype of body dysmorphic disorder, which is categorized as a subtype of obsessive compulsive related disorders. But muscle dysmorphia actually shares a lot of features with eating disorders, and so when we're talking about men, it's a relevant body image concern. And muscle dysmorphia basically is a disorder of like disturbed body image, where men who are actually quite muscular see themselves as really deficient in muscularity and not muscular enough. And so they engage in a lot of really unhealthy behaviors to try to become more muscular. So that could include things like going to the gym, again, excessively, particularly focused on weightlifting, and potentially taking steroids or another kind of muscle enhancer. And even though they're not eating disorders, we often do see disordered eating in muscle dysmorphia, where we see this really, what we call a catabolic eating pattern that is, again, really over-relying on protein consumption, and often, is to the point where it can be dangerous for your kidneys and other body systems, and has a lot of the same kind of rigidity that we might see in a traditional eating disorder. And data in terms of prevalence there, we see about like 7% of men in their lifetime might have muscle dysmorphia, so a little bit of a larger kind of number there. And some of the kind of what that might look like, again, would be a lot of gym-related activity, but also might be shame about their body and not feeling they're muscular enough, so might wear baggy clothing, those sorts of things, feel uncomfortable disclosing their body to other people, or doing the opposite, where they actually do try to show off a lot of their body to compensate for that concern.
Now, you're building this new program called More Than Muscles Project. What is that, and how exactly does it work?
Yeah, so the Body Project More Than Muscles is what we call an eating disorder prevention program, but you could also just consider it a body image program that really focuses on using what we call cognitive dissonance, which I'll talk about in just a second, to basically help to address body image concerns for men, so both concerns with leanness and muscularity. And what we do in these programs is it's actually a 2-session, 2-hour each, so 4 hours total basically in the program over a course of 2 weeks. And they're group-based programs, so we have groups of between 4 to 6 plus men in a group, led actually by other young men who often, many of whom have struggled with body image concerns in the past as well. And what we do in those programs is we use cognitive dissonance, which is, if you are not familiar with that term, basically shows that when you act in a way that contradicts how you think or contradicts your beliefs, we tend to experience what we call dissonance, or just psychological discomfort. And we as human beings really don't like to contradict ourselves and don't love feeling uncomfortable, so we tend to alleviate that distress by actually matching our thoughts to our behavior. So we can actually use that in these group programs to help improve body image by having men actively argue against and confront these like really unrealistic cultural ideals to be lean and muscular that are portrayed in kind of traditional media and social media. And what we do is we have them basically engage in a bunch of verbal, written, group-based, behavioral activities with these other men in the group to really challenge those cultural pressures. And the idea is that that can help decrease that buy-in that we have culturally, that, leanness and muscularity is the only way to be kind of attractive or valuable as a man or to be masculine. And so we really confront all of those pressures within these programs. And I could go into details probably all day about the type of things that we do in the programs, but just for a couple of examples, really everything is to actively challenge those cultural ideals. So we have men do things like in between the sessions, like challenging body image concerns that they might have. So a common one we hear about a lot is something like, being able to go to the pool in the summer, here we're in the South, it's really hot, to be able to go to the pool without a shirt on for men. And that being a big often concern that we hear in the groups. And so we challenge men to do that, then we come back and we kind of debrief, talk about how it went. And it's really nice because you get, because it's a group-based program, you also have this validation from other men who are experiencing the same things. And it, I think for men in particular, helps them to understand they're not alone in these concerns and that you can actually learn skills to help improve how you feel about your body and your relationship to your body.
So now I understand you're a master trainer with the Body Project, and some of your work is connected back with the Body Project program. Can you tell me a little bit about what the Body Project is and how it connects to the current work that you're doing?
Yeah, so the More Than Muscles program is actually a adaptation, basically, of the Body Project. The Body Project is a large program that is, again, cognitive dissonance-based, and it's an eating disorder prevention program or body image program for young women in particular. And I think that goes with this sort of cultural understanding that we've had for years where most of our programming, most of our research has been focused on women. And so I'm a master trainer for that program, so I've gotten to travel across the country training colleges and facilitators to implement that program. And right now, and this is probably an underestimation too, but the program has been implemented in over 150 college campuses across the U.S., 25 countries, and the total reach is about 3.5 million young women that have had the program. So really encouraging and something for my research that I would love to be able to get there for the side for men as well. But we, in our work, basically adapted that programming for women to actually be relevant for men because the Body Project really just addresses primarily thinness-based concerns, and we know that certainly men can have leanness concerns and thinness concerns regarding body image, but it's really missing a large part of muscularity and also how those things tie into masculinity and other sorts of kind of cultural norms for men. So we took that programming and adapted it actually with several focus groups and input from young men who were within the age range, just to make sure that we were actually incorporating men's experiences too, given that I don't identify as a man, and so my experience is not going to translate there, even if I know a ton of it in terms of the research. So we did that kind of as a group team to make sure that the program was relevant, and we've kind of refined it over time in the years since we started the program.
Now, in addition to your current work, you've previously developed the Pride Body Project. What is the status of that program, and what has the impact been with that?
Yeah, sure. So the Pride Body Project is also a dissonance-based program. So like you said, they all kind of connect together. But that program in particular was specifically developed for what we call sexual minority men. And I know that's not a term that most people actually use out there in the world, but that would refer to men who identify as gay, bisexual plus, queer, kind of any non-heterosexual identity. And we specifically developed that program because there is evidence that sexual minority men do have an increased risk for body image related concerns and eating disorders compared to non-sexual minority men. Obviously, that's not the only risk factor because we have a whole program that's for men generally, regardless of orientation. But within that trial, we found we did initial small kind of trial of that program and found really encouraging results where we found decreases in body dissatisfaction, drive for muscularity, how much you see your body as an object rather than like you as a person. Also decreased internalization of those lean muscular body ideals, so how much you buy into that ideal, reduced like problematic dietary restraint, and also bulimic symptoms, so kind of that binge eating and compensatory behaviors that I talked about earlier. And we found that compared to an assessment only control, so basically people just completing assessments but not doing anything else. And we found that those effects maintained for a whole month after men completed the program, which again is really encouraging given it's only 4 hours long. And we're now testing that program, actually have been for the last 5 years, in a really large scale trial in Southern California, where I was prior to coming to Auburn. And we're wrapping that study up, which is really exciting, in the next year or so. We tested that program in about 300 sexual minority men in Southern California. So again, really exciting work. We don't know the results yet, but we should be knowing that within the next couple of years. And we're following men through actually a 2-year follow-up period. So for a long period of time. And we, with that, are going to be able to actually see if not only can we improve some of these risk factors for eating disorders, for muscle dysmorphia, but can we actually prevent the onset of an eating disorder, which is kind of the ultimate test of a program that's trying to prevent eating disorders, is actually can you truly prevent them? And that just takes a lot of time to be able to determine. So that's where that program is at. And if we do find kind of similar effects to what we found in our initial trial, the goal would be ultimately to be able to implement that program kind of across college campuses for young sexual minority men, but then also within LGBTQ plus health centers across the country too. So hopefully we will be getting there in future years.
So I want to get back to your current work, the More Than Muscles program. How does that fit into this larger program, and what is your goal with More Than Muscles?
Yeah, so with More Than Muscles, I'm really excited about where we're at and where we're going. So we are kind of midway through a larger scale trial of that program. I mentioned that I just recently started here at Auburn within the last year, and prior to that I was at an institution in San Diego, and we did randomized about 100 men to either More Than Muscles or an active control condition, so kind of the next step in testing that program out. And we got funding from the Arlene and Michael Rosen Foundation, which is a really wonderful mental health charity that focuses on specifically men's mental health. And they are funding that program to continue here at Auburn as well. So we're going to be recruiting another 100 or so men to participate in the program from anywhere in the state of Alabama and also anywhere in Georgia. And so we just started recruiting for that program actually about a month ago. So we're hoping to start our first set of groups soon, which is really exciting. But the cool thing about, obviously the pandemic has caused a lot of, incredible difficulties and huge long-lasting changes on mental health, physical health, obviously everything. But we did find that we actually started going online and doing more virtual-based programming, and so that's kind of an artifact where now this trial, it's a fully virtual program, which I think is actually really exciting to be able to increase the reach. So again, we're recruiting men all across the state of Alabama that can participate, and the same thing in Georgia. And so it's a really nice opportunity to have people from different areas be able to connect in these groups, and again, have that sense of I'm not alone in experiencing these things. But again, we're in that trial, we're going to be comparing More Than Muscles to an active control condition. We're following men through a 6-month follow-up, so a little bit of a longer period of time to see if we do have any preventative effect, or if we can just maintain our effects for a longer period of time. And then ultimately, if we find similar effects in that trial, which should be wrapping up in the next couple of years, we would really love to be able to implement the program or kind of get it out there across college campuses. And I've actually had a lot of interest and inquiries from college campuses that have wanted to expand their body image programming for young men, just kind of reinforcing how much this actually is a really important issue that we should be studying and working on. So that's exciting for us and our team, certainly. And our goal is that hopefully we can get the program out there. We just want to make sure that it really works, and we're really confident that it works before we take that step.
Now, as you've done work to develop this treatment program, you've actually conducted tests both here and in other countries. Why is that something that you took time to do?
Yeah, so I have some really wonderful colleagues in Brazil, and they had reached out initially just expressing interest after we published our first trial of More Than Muscles, and just saying how much there was a really strong need for that kind of programming in Brazil. There really were no body image programs, certainly for men, and really limited even larger resources for eating disorders within Brazil, and obviously which is a huge country. And so we partnered together basically to test the More Than Muscles program. Obviously I do not speak Portuguese, and so I was not going to even touch trying to translate things, but again, they're a really wonderful team, and they were able to translate the program. We got them trained in everything, and they did an exceptional job of basically recruiting 180 men in Brazil to participate in either the program or an assessment-only control. And we found basically really comparable results through 1 month, and actually they looked through 6-month follow-up as well, that we had improvements in body appreciation, body image concerns, disordered eating, muscle dysmorphia symptoms. And the reason why we wanted to do that, one, just I think when anyone expresses a need and wants to sees a gap in what could be fulfilled, obviously if I can do that, and if the work that we're doing can reach that group, we would love to be able to do it. But also I think, certainly body image concerns are a global issue for women, for men, for all genders. And so ideally the programs that we're making, we don't want them to just work here in the United States or just work regionally. So again, being able to see this across the United States and then also across the globe is, the ultimate goal of all this work. And so we wanted to make sure that it worked just as well in Brazilian men. And if it didn't, then that's really important to know too, so that we could work on, okay, maybe there need to be certain cultural adaptations, things that we need to do differently. And, I think that will be a question again for doing more of this type of work kind of across different countries, but that was the general goal, to make sure that these programs are applicable not just in the United States, but kind of also more broadly, so that ideally we can reach more men and help more folks with body image concerns.
Now, I know this has been an intensive study to determine the validity of this tool. What has your work found about the results from this method of treatment?
Yeah, so again, we've seen really encouraging results with kind of across these trials, consistent improvements in body image related concerns. So both body fat dissatisfaction, muscularity dissatisfaction, also again, internalization, or how much you buy into those, kind of lean, muscular, unrealistic appearance ideals, and then really consistent results with reductions in overall kind of what I would call traditional disordered eating symptoms, and then also muscle dysmorphia related symptoms as well. And what is really cool, I think, in the work that we're doing with men is that in women, these programs have just looked at preventing kind of eating disorder symptoms, traditional eating disorder symptoms. But in men, we do know that muscle dysmorphia is also a relevant body image concern. And there's currently no treatments for muscle dysmorphia per se. There are treatments for body dysmorphic disorder, but there's not anything specific for muscle dysmorphia. And what we're finding is that we can basically target both sets of those symptoms through kind of reducing that internalization of a lean muscular body ideal. So we kind of can, so to speak, kind of kill two birds with one stone, which just from a program perspective is really great, that if men do have body image concerns kind of in either of these arenas, since they can often overlap, you can potentially help those concerns with one program. I will say, though, that again, this is a body image program and a preventative program, so it's not something that necessarily would be applicable or appropriate for someone with like an active eating disorder already. Although I will say we've had men who are in various stages of recovery from an eating disorder in the program that need to work on body image concerns, and it's been really helpful in that regard as well.
So as we get ready to wrap up, let's talk about next steps. I understand you have a list of organizations that are wanting to implement this program in their work. So if a listener has a friend or family member dealing with an eating disorder or muscle dysmorphia, when will this treatment program be available, and what options are out there now to be able to help if someone needs help now?
Yeah, great question. I think the process of research, unfortunately, I love research, and it's also so incredibly slow, which is really frustrating when people are really wanting something now. And I know, as I mentioned, there have been a lot of colleges that have reached out wanting to have the More Than Muscles program at their school, which is really exciting. And we've just been, waiting to make sure that we really know that it works first, because we really just wouldn't want to put something out there that is not effective or not efficacious, and then could therefore or potentially be harmful. So we're really just wanting to make sure we have solid evidence before we go that route. But we're hoping to wrap the current trial that we're doing here at Auburn by 2024, and with the goal of being able to get the program out there after that point. And, in the meantime, certainly obviously if, there are folks listening who might have a loved one or be interested in kind of this programming and would want to participate in a research study, we are currently recruiting again in Alabama and Georgia for the More Than Muscles study. And folks are welcome to get in touch with me, and we'll put kind of contact info in the notes for the podcast. But if someone's actually currently struggling or knows somebody who's struggling with an eating disorder or muscle dysmorphia, there are also treatment options available. And certainly, again, as I mentioned, this is more of a preventative program, a program that's more focused on body image concerns more generally. And so if someone is having consistent kind of problems with their eating behavior, rising to the level of an eating disorder or clinical levels of muscle dysmorphia, then really treatment would be the best option versus these kind of more body image focused programs. And so locally, we do have actually the Auburn Eating Disorders Clinic run through the Auburn University Psychological Services Center, where we do treat eating disorders and also body image disorders like muscle dysmorphia. And if folks live outside of the area of that reach, there are also some really great resources through the National Eating Disorders Association, which we'll link to, and also through Eating Disorders Hope as well. So again, there are great treatments out there. It can be difficult finding them, and I'm also always happy if there are specific questions that folks have. I've had folks reach out to me as well, and I'm happy to try to do what I can to connect people with appropriate resources.
Well, Dr. Brown, thank you so much for giving us an inside look at your work and the treatments that you're developing to help so many people struggling with eating disorders. To all of our listeners here in America and around the world, we thank you for joining us for another episode of the Things You Didn't Know podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the show on whatever platform you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. It helps us out more than you know. We'll see you next time on the Things You Didn't Know podcast.
As we prepare to close out the first hour of our celebration, we want to introduce you to musical artist and composer Khari Allen Lee. Khari was selected as the Daniel F. Breeden Eminent Visiting Scholar in the Arts and Humanities in the College of Liberal Arts this fall. He's an award-winning artist with a music degree from Auburn University, the Berklee College of Music, and the University of New Orleans. And he served on the faculty of the University of New Orleans, Loyola University, Tulane University, and the New Orleans Center for the Creative Arts. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the musical stylings of Khari Allen Lee.
It's hard to put into words what it is that makes Auburn so special. But once you've experienced Auburn, it's with you forever. So it's not really about how we say it, it's how we do it. It starts at the heart of who we are and moves through everything we do. It's how we teach, how we learn, how we live. Learn more at auburn.edu.
Welcome back for the second hour of our celebration of research and creativity. Did you happen to notice the mural behind us? It's beautiful, but that isn't why we're here. This wheat paste mural is actually the creative work of Dr. Wendy Deshane from the Department of Art and Art History. The mural contains colorized scanning electron micrographs of pollen grains of 42 species of local plants. The work was created in collaboration with Jeff Schmucke and Dr. Alan Harvey. If you want to see it in person, and you should come by and take a look, it's on the second floor of the Academic Classroom and Laboratory Complex outside of the Big EO Center offices. In this hour, we will learn about how CLA faculty are engaging in cross-campus partnerships to drive forward the university research program, and even more importantly, how work happening in CLA is mission critical to the advancement of a new initiative that is aimed at targeting what the federal government is calling a priority for the country. Later this hour, we will experience a piece of theater devised here at Auburn that tells the stories of ordinary Alabamians across the 200 years of the state's history. As the state leader in artificial intelligence innovation, research, and education, Auburn University announced in March that it was bolstering its position in the AI space through an investment of $2 million by the Office of the Provost with support from the Samuel Ginn College of Engineering to create AI at AU, the Auburn University Artificial Intelligence Initiative. This project is designed to assemble a university-wide multidisciplinary faculty team to expand AI research and education, build a computational infrastructure for AI research and education at the university, develop Auburn University's faculty infrastructure for AI research and education, explore university-wide educational innovations in AI, and become the university's focal point for participation in statewide, regional, and national initiatives such as the SEC AI Consortium. Joining me now is Jerry Dozier, the McCrary Eminent Chair Professor in Computer Science and Software Engineering. He's also the technical lead for the AI at AU initiative, along with Dr. Adam Jortner, the Goodwin Philpott Eminent Professor of Religion in the Department of History and a member of the AI at AU program. Jerry, let's start with you. What is AI at AU?
AI at AU is we got funding, about $2 million from the Provost Office as well as the Samuel Ginn College of Engineering. Now, there's some things that we want to do. One is, we want to build a community, and this is a community of AI researchers. So AI is going on throughout the campus. We want to bring it all together. Okay, there's some money to develop a computational infrastructure for these. Right now we have 100, believe it or not, we have 115 faculty that are doing research in AI research. I said research, AI research in education. What kind of computational infrastructure do we need for this? And so we got some money for that to kind of get that started, right? And that's going to grow, right? We are also looking at, and I'm not going to say cluster hire, but I'm going to say, we're looking at, increasing our faculty infrastructure as well. So in the College of Liberal Arts, we are looking at a professor, bringing in a professor there, right? In psychological sciences, right? And we have another professor opening over in pharmacy, and they're going to have one foot in their core research, but another foot in artificial intelligence, and that's like totally cool. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring people together. We're trying to bring this community together. Okay, and so there is an ongoing an ongoing activity with the SEC, the 14 universities, where basically we're all the universities are trying to hey, to look and say, what are we doing with AI, and how do we work together, to work with one another, in terms of artificial intelligence research and education, and that's pretty much what AI at AU is about. We want to bring people together. We want to look at how do we collaborate. Collaboration is huge. We're all doing really great research in AI, but how do we take it to the next level? AI at AU is taking that to the next level. We want to do that right here at home at Auburn, but we want to extend that. We want to go regional, and then we want to go national, and that's what AI at AU is all about.
Dr. Jortner, you were one of the first CLA faculty to join the initiative. When people think artificial intelligence, a religious history professor is probably not the first researcher that comes to mind. So what sparked your interest, and why did you decide to get involved with AI at AU?
I actually, I just got in touch with Jerry on a lark, because this program, AI at AU, here's the thing. Yeah. Often people think artificial intelligence is a pure science, or even science fiction, but we also all know that it's not, because these algorithms that we deal with on websites, and in our politics and in our commerce are already shaping the way that we live, work, and interact. And that means that they're already affecting how human beings operate. Many people will get, this is the part where the voiceover goes, the line between human and machine. And we get all really, really scared. But I think that artificial intelligence is one of the most humanities-driven things that there is, because of the way this technology is already shaping us, but also because of the need for us to shape that technology, to be sure that the values that we hold dear are going to be protected by this technology rather than exploited by it. Which is to say, we need to really think about the ethics, the applications, and the practicalities of artificial intelligence. It's way too, and I mean, the fiction writers are the guys who invented all of the scary killer robots and Skynet and the Daleks. But we imagined those things. We can also imagine ways in which artificial intelligence becomes the greatest tool potentially that we've ever had, to change life on Earth for the better. But we also have to be really careful about that. And I think part of having a broad initiative at Auburn is being able to raise those questions and talk about those questions across our disciplines, so that it's not just humanities guys saying, has your robot read a book about philosophy yet? To actually think about how do we make sure an ethical decision is being made by a machine, and what does that actually look like?
That's right.
And I was just actually, this didn't get a lot of play in the last week, but actually some major robotics companies this week have pledged they will not develop their robots for private military use. And again, that's an important step, but it's one of a lot. That how we are. Another way of putting it is, we think about artificial intelligence as machines being able to make their own choices, which is sometimes really scary. But in fact, artificial intelligence is much more about machines making the choices that we tell them to, which is way scarier. And it's also potentially really great, because this is something that the humanities needs to be deeply involved in, but we need to also be collaborating with the scientists, with the engineers, with the psychologists, and it's just an enormous opportunity.
One element of this initiative is the creation of an artificial intelligence think tank. And this is for both of you. From your perspective, what does that look like and why is it necessary?
I mean, one thing about having a think tank is that it allows people with different expertise to see how not just the way technologies are applied, but also sort of to I don't want to say it allows people to steal from each other, but allows us to borrow from one another. But it also encourages the institution. It will encourage Auburn as an institution to not get stuck into slots. Because a great deal of funding and ideas tend to be really, much of it is allocated to computer science, but if you're modeling in physics or neuroscience or economics, we got to be able to talk to each other.
Exactly. And so, I'm going to say that, our think tank, and Adam and I have talked about this, and basically we want a think tank for Auburn University, number one, and for the AI at AU initiative, secondly. So it's how do we track the trends of AI? We need people looking at that. Right? Because we want to always be at the forefront of AI, and it's moving, and we can't predict where it's going. We can't. Now, one of the things that we know it's going, it's use-inspired research. So this is, I can come up with the greatest, deep learner, but the second I come up with that and I say it's great, everybody's going to ask me one question. And that one question is going to be, how do I use it? Well, where are you going to use it? How is it going to impact AI? How is it going to impact humanity, right, in the future? And that's why we need a think tank. So we're, in AI at AU, what we're working on, use-inspired AI and foundational AI. We need that other element that's looking to the future. That's going to say, hey, maybe this might be where we need to go.
When we talked offline, Jerry, you were passionate about the need for CLA faculty to be involved in this university-wide initiative. Why is that?
When you look at, this is NSF, and you look at they're coming out with $20 million programs. These are 5-year programs. And what they want to do is they want to develop, NSF AI institutes. The institutes are like, AI and optimization, something that's not strictly AI. Okay. And so when they're coming up with these new centers, they're like AI in philosophy or AI in sociology. It's always applied AI. It's not give me another neural network. It's give me something, AI in arts and art history, right? And so that's why. So yeah, I think when you look at engineering, computer science, we can come up with a really, really cool, deep learning algorithm. And we're going to do that here at Auburn. We're going to do it. All right. But the thing is, once you develop that, the question is, how are you going to use it?
Yeah, and I think one of the things about having a think tank is that again, thinking about humanities and AI, it is a place where we think about what the dreams are, and then we actually try to figure out, well, how is this actually going to work? And now I'm going to tell one of my favorite stories about AI, which is, artificial intelligence chess engines an artificial intelligence machine beat the world grandmaster in 1997, and by this point, even virtually any computer program can beat the greatest human players in chess. But the idea for developing those things was this is going to reveal things about how to play chess that human beings never knew before. And actually, that didn't pan out. A lot of the world's greatest chess champions no longer use chess engines because they don't want, chess engines basically found out that you can retreat your pieces, and human beings hate to do that. So human beings are not interested in that anymore. And this is a place where the idea of what AI could have been didn't match up to how it happened. And that's what we're trying to figure. That's something we have to figure out as well. Not just what can these systems do, but what are they doing? What do we want them to do? And how do we get there? And I think that's something you can only do. The person who develops the algorithm needs to be talking to the sociologists, the physicists.
There you go. And that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So the provost invested $2 million into this project along with the College of Engineering. Let's look 5-10 years down the road. Where do you see AI at AU in 2030? What is your goal, Jerry?
Right now, we're looking at 3 years out, okay? And we're putting together a number of committees, and we want to get those up and running. What I want to see is I want to see an increase in, AI research funding, increase in AI educational funding. That's one thing we don't really know, but there's a lot of funding out there for AI research. Okay, we want to kind of come up with ultimately, and you're asking me, maybe I'm the wrong person to ask. We want to have an AI ecosystem. What does that mean? We developed, and I sent this out to the 115 faculty members. So my PhD students and I, we've developed a model that actually will allow you to see the closest researchers that are close to you and the research that they're doing. We call it AI at AU. We call it R-Harmony. Have you ever heard of, eHarmony? Here at Auburn, we have R-Harmony, and you can actually look out there and you can see who you're closest to, and we make it revolve and all that other kind of stuff. So, what we want to do is we want to bring everyone together. We want a community. And I really think that when we start collaborating, and I'm hoping that we start here at Auburn with the collaboration, then we start building out, we're going to develop, and don't take this the wrong way, but we're going to develop an elaborate playground for AI research and education. And that's what we want. I think that's what everybody wants. I know that's what the 115 researchers and educators want. We want to have fun. And it's really hard to have fun when, you're isolated. AI at AU is bringing everybody that is even thinking about AI. We're all together, and we're a team, and that's so. In 10 years, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a big playground where you have a lot of professors playing around it. We've got other professors coming in from all across the nation, right? And they just want to be a part of what we're doing, because what we're doing is extremely special, and it's awesome.
And you say this is for everyone across campus. So if a faculty member wants to get involved, how can they find their place in this work?
I would just say, first of all, just send me an email. Let's get you on the AI at AU list. I'm hoping that we're going to have a meeting here in November. We're going to try to bring everyone together just to talk. And I'm hoping in February that we're going to have an AI at AU Forum. We're going to start that. We need to start building collisions where people can talk to one another, people can see the kind of research, AI research and education that's going on here at Auburn University. And, we're going to start that in the spring semester. And we're going to go on from there. So if you're interested, just send me an email and we'll get you plugged in. We got a lot of great people. They're doing some great stuff. And I really think that there's a place for everyone in this initiative.
Dr. Dozier, Dr. Jortner, thank you so much for joining us for this celebration. Moving through Alabama's 200-year history like a river is how Dr. Tessa Carr describes her original work, Alabama Love Stories, where every now and then we pull ashore and witness multiple perspectives about a given moment. Joining us to talk about this original work is Dr. Tessa Carr. So we're about to watch a portion of Alabama Love Stories. Which shore are we about to arrive at?
Well, in this section of the play, you're going to experience the civil rights era in Montgomery. And particularly, it's actually it's the very beginning of the civil rights actions. I certainly wouldn't say it's the beginning of the civil rights movement because, lots of things happen before we come to sort of civil unrest often. But this particular piece is about the sort of, in some way, parallel lives that were going on at this point in Alabama history in Montgomery, particularly the story of Juliet Hampton Morgan, who was a librarian in Montgomery, and Rosa Parks, who, as we know, was going to be one of the first people to take direct action in the civil rights movement, and also some of the beginnings of the story of Dr. King in his early years there in Montgomery. Lots of different texts pulled together in that moment, with some poetry woven in as well, and songs. So it's that chunk of time.
They said wait. Well, I waited. For 100 years I waited. In cotton fields, kitchens, balconies, in bread lines, at back doors, on chain gangs, in stinking colored toilets, in crowded ghettos, outside of schools and voting booths. And some said later, and some said never. Then a new wind blew, and a new voice rode its wings with quiet urgency, strong, determined, sure. No, it said. Not never, not later, not even soon. Now, walk. And other voices echoed the freedom words. Walk together, children. Don't get weary. Whispered them. Sang them. Prayed them. Shouted them. Walk. And I walked the streets of Montgomery until a link in the chain of patient acquiescence broke. Then again, sit down. And I sat at the Countess of Greensboro. Ride, and I rode the bus for freedom. Kneel, and I got down on my knees in prayer and faith. March, and I'll march to the last chain fall singing, we shall overcome.
Now all the dogs are hoses in Birmingham.
Now all the clubs and guns in Selma can turn this tide. Not all the jails can hide these young black faces from their destiny of manhood, of equality,
of dignity,
of the American dream. 100 years past due. Now.
We speak of a love which is expressed in the Greek word agape. Agape means understanding, redeeming goodwill for all men. It is an overflowing love which is purely spontaneous, unmotivated, groundless, and creative. It is not set in motion by any quality or object of its function. It is a love of God operating in the human heart. It is a love in which the individual seeks not his own good, but the good of his neighbor.
She knew exactly who she was, where she came from, and what her conscience compelled her to do.
Welcome. Can I help you?
Do you have any books on how to feed a horned toad?
That is just the kind of question our reference librarian, Miss Juliet Morgan, loves to try and answer. Hello, Miss Fisher. How may I help you? This young man has a question for you.
Where can I find more information on how to feed a horned toad?
Well, that sounds like a dangerous proposition. But I believe you'll find what you need on the fifth aisle to your right near the bottom shelf. Look in the 597s.
Do you have any references about genealogy?
That would be 929, third aisle to your left, bottom shelf.
Hi, do you know what a Republican is? My daddy says I don't need to know because I'll never be one.
There are other opinions and other words for you to discover. Let me help you.
Miss Morgan, I'm here to get a library card. Can you help me?
No, I'm sorry, but I can't. They may take it for a long time, but not forever.
Perhaps Miss Morgan would find Harlem a more congenial atmosphere than that of her native Southland. And if so, I'm sure Montgomery would gladly buy her a one-way ticket.
There she goes again, crazy old maid. Good riddance. Tall, thin, peculiar.
Yes, she's satisfied now.
Good riddance. Tall, thin, peculiar.
Yes, she's satisfied now.
Good riddance.
Come on, Mama.
Thin, peculiar.
Did you walk home again? Yes, Mama, I did. There you go, making a fool of yourself. It's going to be so that no decent white folk in Montgomery have anything to do with us. Nobody is going to do anything different just because you got off a bus. Juliet, I wish you would be somebody other than yourself.
Agape is not a weak, passive love. It is a love in action. Agape is a love seeking to preserve and create community. It is a willingness to sacrifice in the interest of mutuality. It is a willingness to go to any length to preserve and restore community. Agape is a willingness to forgive, not 7 times, but 70 times 7 in order to restore community. Agape does not begin by discriminating between worthy and unworthy people.
All right, let him sit.
Oh, it's fine.
I told you to get up.
No, I will not.
I'll have you arrested.
Just call the police.
Good evening. What seems to be the problem?
This colored woman wouldn't stand up.
Ma'am, would you please stand up?
I don't think I should.
You know what will happen if you don't.
How do you treat us like this?
I don't know. Law is the law, and you're under arrest.
You will not be treated like this anymore. You have a good evening, sir. I wasn't any more tired that day from work than I am any other day. I was tired of being treated like this.
Miss Parks.
Mr. Nixon, good of you to come down.
I've just paid your bill and I'll see you home.
Oh, thank you for that.
Rosa, I've got something to ask. You know we missed an opportunity with the arrest of Claudette Colvin several months ago. Your case could be what we need to mount a protest against our treatment on Montgomery's buses.
I'm not so sure about my name tied to something like that.
Miss Pauls, think about it. Fred Gray would serve as your attorney. Why did you refuse to give up your seat?
I couldn't take it anymore. All right.
Joanne, it's E.D. Nixon. We've got the right case. Rosa Parks was arrested today for failing to stand for a white man. She was in the middle seating and not occupying a white seat. Her hearing is set for Monday, and we've got Fred Gray representing.
All right. It's time to boycott. While we are demanding humane treatment, we will not ride those buses. I've got volunteers who can make flyers tonight to get out into the community before Monday.
All right, I'll keep calling the ministers. Reverend King, I just bailed Rosa Parks out of jail for refusing to stand for a white man. The time has come. Only through a boycott can we make it clear to the white folks that we will not accept this type of treatment any longer. Dr. King, we've taken this type of thing too long already.
We need to hold a meeting. We can use Holt Street Baptist Church.
This flyer calls for a boycott to take place Monday, December 5th. We need to make as many flyers as possible to get out into the city tonight. I think we can make at least 5,000.
5,000 in one night. Is that even possible?
All things are possible with faith, but faith without action is dead, so let's get to work.
Reverend Abernathy.
Reverend Hubbard.
Reverend Allen.
Dr. Wilson.
Reverend Fields. We are asking for guaranteed courteous treatment by drivers. That we are seated first come, first served, with Negroes seated from the back of the bus towards the front and whites seated from the front towards the back. That all Negro bus operators will be hired for predominantly black routes. Now, we'll have all this information and more at the Holt Street Baptist Church meeting.
E.D. Nixon, we'll let you in here.
How you doing, Joanne?
There comes a time that people get tired. We are here this evening to say to those that have mistreated us so long that we are tired. Tired of being segregated and humiliated.
Amen.
Tired of being kicked about by the brutal feet of oppression. One of the great glories of democracy is the right to protest for it. We are protesting for the birthright of justice in the community.
Amen.
Love will be the regulating ideal.
Yes.
We will be guided by the highest principles of law and order. Emphasizing the Christian doctrine of love, we will be guided by the deepest principles of our Christian faith. Amen. Love will be the regulating ideal. Amen. We must hear the words of Jesus echoing across the centuries.
Love your enemies.
Bless them that curse you and pray for them that despitefully use you.
Amen.
If we fail to do this, our protest will end up as a meaningless drama on the stage of history. In spite of the mistreatment that we have confronted, we must not become bitter and end up by hating our white brothers. As Booker T. Washington said, let no man pull you apart so low to make you hate someone.
Amen.
If we protest courageously, and yet with dignity and Christian love, when the history books are written in future generations, historians will have to pause and say, there lived a great people,
A black people,
who injected new meaning and dignity into the veins of civilization. This is our challenge and our overwhelming responsibility.
Amen.
To the Montgomery Advertiser. Not since the first Battle of the Marne has the taxi been put to as good use as it has this last week in Montgomery. However, the spirit animating our Negro citizens as they ride those taxis or walk from the heart of Cloverdale to Mobile Road has been more like Gandhi than that of the taxicab army that saved Paris. As you remember, Gandhi set out on his salt march from Sabarmati to the sea, about 150 miles, as a boycott against the government's salt monopoly. He vowed that he would not return until India was independent. Depending on their point of view, people laughed, sneered, or shook their heads. But 17 years later, India was free. Passive resistance combined with freedom from hate is a force to be reckoned with. The Negroes of Montgomery's task is greater than Gandhi's, however, for they have greater prejudice to overcome. One feels that history is being made in Montgomery these days. the most important in her career. It is hard to imagine a soul so dead, a heart so hard, a vision so blinded and provincial as to not be moved with admiration at the quiet dignity, discipline, and dedication with which the Negroes have conducted their boycott.
Walk with me, Lord. Oh, walk with me. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Oh, walk with me. Walk with me. As I walk this Jesus journey. I need Jesus to walk with me.
Their cause and their conduct filled me with deep sympathy, pride, humanity, and envy. I envy their unity, their good humor, their fortitude, and their willingness to suffer for great Christian and democratic principles, and just plain decent treatment. It is interesting to read editorials on the legality of this boycott. They make me think of that famous one that turned America from a tea to a coffee-drinking nation. Come to think of it, one might say that this nation was founded on a boycott. Instead of acting like sullen adolescents whose attitude is make me, we ought to be working to span the gap between segregation and integration, to extend public services, schools, libraries, parks, and transportation to Negro citizens.
Juliet, this has to stop. We're receiving daily complaints, threats to the budget of the library, and people are beginning to say that you are a communist and a bad influence on children.
I can sympathize with their fear. I'm suffering the cuts from old friends, the ringing telephone with anonymous voices. I know how it feels when the butterflies in your stomach turn to buzzards.
Juliet, for your own sanity and safety, please stop.
All right, but only because of the threat to the library. Walk with me. 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 Watch yourself. Walk with me. 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 Walk with me.
Miss Morgan, and this is Buford Boone with the Tuscaloosa News. Thank you for your personal letter responding to my speech at the White Citizens Council meeting.
That was a very brave thing to do.
Miss Morgan, your voice is an important and unique one, and I want to ask your permission to reprint your letter to me in its entirety.
Mr. Boone, I am flattered, but I have promised certain people that I will no longer publish any of my beliefs.
Miss Morgan, if that is your wish, I will honor it.
Well, I wouldn't say that it was my wish exactly.
Miss Morgan, I ask you again, may I publish this urgent call for action?
Yes. Yes, you can. Dear Publisher Boone, please accept my warmest congratulations and most sincere gratitude for your wise and courageous speech at the White Citizens meeting in Tuscaloosa last Friday. There are many Southerners from various walks of life who know that you are right. They know that what they call our Southern way of life must inevitably change. Many of them are even eager for it to change, but they are afraid to express themselves. So afraid to stand out alone, to walk out naked. Everyone who speaks as you do, who has the faith to do what he believes is right in scorn of the consequences, does great good in preparing the way for a happier and more equitable future for all Americans. You help redeem Alabama's very bad behavior in the eyes of the nation and the world. I had begun to wonder if there were any men in the state, any white men, with any sane evaluation of our situation here in the middle of the 20th century, and most especially with any moral courage to express it. I know men, lawyers, teachers, merchants, librarians, men and women of good sense and goodwill. But so far as standing up and being counted for, well, they were happy for the Hungarian freedom fighters to have all the courage and all the glory. I am ashamed that men and women of good sense and goodwill have let power pass by default into the hands of those like the White Citizens Council. It is time to get on with a job that we have put off far too long. Full citizenship, equal rights, and respect for all people. If the university in its halls of learning has any lesson more important than that, I am unaware of it.
With this statement, Juliet Morgan, controversial employee of the local library, continues her work there, although most of the board want her dismissed due to her interracial views. Members of the board are listed below. Why not write them your feelings in this touchy matter? White Citizens Council, States' Rights Advocate.
She knew exactly who she was, where she came from, and what her conscience compelled her to do.
I'm tired. Raymond and me, we can't find work. We can't find solace. We can't find peace. You asked for a face, and I gave you a face, my face. And yet you see my tears, and you turn your back on me. Suppose it's time I move on. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. The world behind me.
Shame.
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 The world behind me. The cross before.
As mayor of Montgomery, it is within my purview to cut library appropriations. Well, I finally figured out a way to fire Miss Juliet Morgan without violating any civil service law. Library appropriations for next year are cut by exactly the amount of her salary.
I still shall follow.
rise for the Jews from another quarter. But you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this.
Agape is recognition of the fact that all life is interrelated. All of humanity is involved in a single process, and all men are brothers. To the degree that I am harming my brother, no matter what he is doing to me, to that extent, I'm harming myself.
So the concept from this play began in what I think might be the most Southern way possible, a conversation about someone's Aunt Betty. How did it go from that conversation over coffee to a full-length play that explores the many eras of Alabama history?
Well, it went, so the initial conversation was between myself and Mark Wilson, who's the director of the Caroline Marshall Drawn Center for the Arts and Humanities, which is also part of the College of Liberal Arts. And Mark and I have worked together on a previous project about the desegregation of Tuskegee High School. And so the Drawn Center has a series of letters from Byron Yarborough, whose family lived in the house, Pebble Hill, that is the Drawn Center location. And these letters, while some of them were from Byron Yarborough, that's not how they came into Mark's possession. So they actually came into Mark's possession through Alabama archivist who found her Aunt Betty's letters upon Betty's death, as she was the executor of Betty's estate, found in the attic at Betty's house a stack of letters with a ribbon tied around them in the attic, blue envelopes, and I've quickly realized that those envelopes, those letters, were letters that her Aunt Betty had written to Byron Yarborough during World War II. They had never met, but they fell in love through these letters. So what we had of the letters was, we had Byron's letters to Betty, where Betty had saved all of them. And then we had a stack of return to sender letters that were letters that came back to Betty after Byron's sad death in the Pacific. So we never had Betty's original letters to Byron that he was responding to. And so Mark asked me to look through these letters and see if there was a story there. Well, there was a story there, but there was definitely a story there. There was a beautiful story there, but it was a question of how would we make this story come to life with some kind of sense of the relationship that developed. And we did that by going through those letters and coding them very carefully for concepts that came up, themes that recurred, like family, love, religion, football, Southern life, back home, what's happening back home, what's happening in the war that they can talk about, because Brian was also the censor for the ship that he was on. And then after sort of coding those, I could take pieces from Betty's later letters that did correspond thematically and also to the depth of feeling of Byron's early letters, and cut those together so that we saw the relationship unfold between them. So it was still nothing but Byron and Betty's language. So that was for the initial thing. And then we started thinking about, well, what about other things that might be in the archive? What about other pieces that are in the archive that haven't been able to be brought to life in a way that gets them outside of the archive, right? So from there, it became, Mark reached out to archivist at the archive, at the state archive, and said, hey, could we come and look at some things? And so they prepared basically a big sort of open list of like, here are collections that we have that we think might have stories of love within them. It's hard to say exactly because there's lots of ephemera in these collections sometimes. I mean, sometimes it's letters, sometimes it's things gathered from a lifetime. So we went through a lot of collections. I say we, myself and Richard Trammell worked as a research assistant for me for a summer. We went through a lot of collections that didn't work at all, trying to figure out how do we both represent a kind of, as much as we can, a breadth of what's in the archive, a breadth of representation of Alabamians, and a breadth of types of love. Because it wasn't just Betty and Byron's story is one of the few sort of straightforward romantic love stories that's in the production. So then from there, it took a lot of hours. It became a full-length play. A lot of hours, and a lot of careful reading of text. Because when you're working with archival documents, when you're working with things that are artifacts from people's lives, I was trained as a performance ethnographer and also as working with oral history. It's very important that you don't take things out of context to the point where you might tell a compelling story, but you're not really being as truthful as you can to all of the context that you know surrounds the story. So that becomes another layer of the careful editing you have to do that, quite frankly, sometimes works well to create compelling performance and other times does not. So what I do is err on the side of the ethical choice of how I cut rather than the performance, what might be the most performance powerful choice. And sometimes, you regret that only because there are times where it just doesn't work as well. And I'll speak to one section in the play real quick for that, where I think that happened, which is in the Civil War section, because when you're dealing with Civil War documents are short. Usually letters are short. There's not a lot of exciting topics going on. And in order to really kind of suss out the difference in the material lived conditions of the people living through the war, it manifests in small details like what you got to eat, what you were able to be delivered from your family versus what someone in a different rank was being able to be delivered in their family. And of course, we're just talking about white families at this point, right? So what we were trying to do in that section was to show a kind of breadth of experience of family, of what those families were going through the separation, as well as looking at the perspective of enslaved people with the documentation that we had remaining, and post-war, formerly enslaved people who were trying to find their families in that post-war era. So with that, I would say there was repetition that a modern audience, a contemporary audience, doesn't always get, is there very intentionally to show where both there was similarity and where there was tremendous difference. So that's a section that I would say I would grapple with. Again, I don't want to go back to it. Don't get me wrong. We've done this piece, but I learned a lot in that about, okay, some of this fine detail of historical work cannot be as realized in a stage production that's dealing with epistolary forms as well as you could with, a film that you could show all those details and you never have to speak them at all, right?
Now, once you decided this was a project that you had to pursue, how did you bring it to life? What was that research process like?
My background is in both theater and performance studies. And within performance studies, one of the things we love is to mash up text, all kinds of text. What I considered this to be is a form of collaged performance. We used a lot of shortcuts through music. We used shortcuts through poetry. We used narration shortcuts also to help weave together. We used projection of imagery, language. We would project the artifacts also during the scenes up above. We projected the titles to help weave the pieces together. So, and I also set out very clearly in the program note to say, hey, this is not comprehensive. We are looking at collage snapshots that are coming through, right? That's what we're getting. And that's what I wanted the audience to be clear about. I also tried very hard to remember and remind the audience that this was work about bringing sort of our documentation of our lives to life again. And in that, tried to make each chunk similar to the document that it was based on. So Juliet Hampton Morgan's life is really based on this elaborate scrapbook that her mother kept after her death. And when you see the piece, you can see these pieces of a scrapbook layering in that were all around on the pages, right? Letters tried to be a sort of back and forth, like a letter exchange would have been. So the communicative layers were there too. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was, I would say this, I think people really went with the idea that we were flowing through history, and that you had to take each one discreetly, and you also had to be open to the idea that this was a broad look at forms of love also. And everyone did not agree with that, and that's okay too, right? So, it wasn't without its difficulty in sort of making those points at times.
Now, I know you took special care with creating this production to pay attention to how events were portrayed, and you wanted to ensure that you were inclusive of the diversity of perspectives of historical events that have made Alabama what it is. Why was that so important to you during the process of writing this?
Well, it's part of the whole, my whole personal perspective in creating performance is to try to think about how performance can show us the possibilities of utopia. Not that I'm certainly not a naive person, but I do believe that performance can show us, it can bring us together in a communal, democratic, civic, public space, and we can share things together that we might not share in any other particular moment or way. And we can say things poetically, we can say things straightforwardly, and we can look back at each other while we do that, right? So for me, this project was always about that. Now, the archive complicates that, and the archive owns its complication in that it is not a very representative repository of Alabamians' experience. It's very limited, and it knows that. They're working on that, but it's years to go, right, to be more inclusive. So that's why having to go outside of the archive happened in quite a few instances. So, and I also think that as part of our land grant mission, it's our job to serve all Alabamians, right? That's our job. And as that job, I always feel very strongly that representation matters, and it matters that we bring as many perspectives and possibilities to the table as possible to look back at our past, but also to look at our past and think about how we might want to go forward. What can we look at and say, oh, that's something from that I hadn't actually thought about, and performances like this give us an opportunity to kind of dig in and underneath to a degree, I think. So, yeah, it's always important to me to try and create a wider field of representation.
Dr. Carr, thank you for joining us and sharing your talent with us. Our celebration continues in just 1 minute.
Great professors change lives. They see potential in us before we see it in ourselves. They advise us and challenge us. They push us to go farther and think deeper. Professors serve as our mentors and even become our friends. They leave an indelible mark on our lives and inspire us long beyond our time at Auburn.
Dr. Brown, he's just brilliant, and it's just amazing to be taught by someone that is so smart, too. I think he's so passionate and just really, really loves what he's doing and loves the students. Every Thanksgiving holiday, he invites any student that doesn't have a home or somewhere to go to just come to his house and hang out with his family. And I think that that's very special because when you have someone that's been poured into and has felt that family aspect so much, he's able to give it to his students and give it out.
I've never had a chance to meet Morris Savage, but I've heard a lot about him, and to just be able to have some of the same interests that he had, knowing his love for Auburn and for the students, it's just there's a great responsibility associated with it, but it certainly opens up more opportunities for me to conduct research, to involve students, to do a number of other different things that without the resources that come with being an endowed chair, not just the name, but the resources that come with it, I wouldn't be able to do.
You can help ensure that students like Tyler learn from the very best teachers and researchers dedicated to providing an unparalleled liberal arts education. For over 165 years, extraordinary professors have changed the lives of Auburn students. Now it's our turn to change theirs.
Welcome back for the third hour of our celebration of research and creativity. In this hour, we will talk with researchers and creators that are bringing their passions and personal experiences into the work they do each day in the College of Liberal Arts. This hour, we're excited to be joined by Dr. Justin Gardner, Assistant Professor of Creative Writing and author of Beneath the Shadow, Legacy and Longing in the Antarctic, a compelling first-hand account that breathes new life into the 19th century journals of Antarctic explorers such as Captain Robert Falcon Scott, Sir Ernest Henry Shackleton, and Captain Ronald Amundsen. Today, Dr. Gardner is giving us an inside look at his new book, which won't be released until early 2024, where he combines his personal experiences and his creative research to write a story with a main character near to his own heart.
Thank you. I'm going to read from my manuscript, Small Altars, which will be published in early 2024 with Tupelo Press. The book is about my brother who passed away 3 years ago. It's also about comic books. As kids, my brother and I were really into comic books and superheroes, and I decided to explore that material as a way of talking about his life and death and our evolving relationship. So it's written in short sections that are meant to recall the panels of a comic book, with the white space surrounding it operating as the gutters, if you will. So I'm going to read two short sections from this, or from early on in the book. And there are also visuals. When I was putting together this manuscript, I initially was thinking of it as possibly being working as sort of a work of graphic nonfiction. And so I reached out to a former student of mine who is an illustrator to see if he would be willing to contribute some images for the book. And my idea was for him to do rather straightforward visual representations of the scenes I was describing in the book in comic form. His idea, which was much better than mine, and one of the reasons why collaboration is so wonderful, was to depict my brother with various superpowers, and to leave those powers unexplained or have them be irrelevant to what was going on inside the book. So the first image you're going to see, you'll see that my brother has bolts shooting out of his eyes, and the second image, he's levitating several feet off the ground. So here goes. All superheroes have an origin story, the series of events, most often tragic, that give birth to their powers and lead them into becoming who they are today. Tony Stark, before he became Iron Man, was a millionaire playboy and an ingenious scientist. They say his character was modeled after Howard Hughes, without the crippling neurosis. Telling which plot lines we remain true to, which details we add and subtract, what we choose to replace. My brother was born with a borderline learning disability. He did not excel at sports or school. He never had a girlfriend or finished college or got a decent job. In his 20s, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and much of the 15 years that followed was wasted away in breakdowns, treatments, a revolving series of doctors and meds. If this were a Hollywood movie, or even a decent comic book, we could expect here a turning. Then one day it happened, and he became. But in the theater of this life, my brother was only ever cast to play himself. Minor role, thankless task. And so, after a few years where he had kept things mostly together, he contracted a rare form of cancer. And 3 years later, at the age of 44, he died. My brother's story is one of the saddest I know. But much of that comes down to me, my failure to recognize how he could ever be content, happy even, with what little he had. A job mopping floors, a one-bedroom apartment. Years, whole decades in fact, when our aging father and mother were his only real friends. In the picture I keep framed on the desk in my study, my brother is only a small boy, 6 or 7 I'd guess, though there is no way for me to be sure. Lying on his back on the brown shag carpet of our childhood home, his legs are crossed in a manner that could only be comfortable for a child. He is listening to a record on our father's turntable, plugged in with a large headset of headphones, the kind that would soon drift out of fashion for several decades, then circle strangely back in. He is dressed in the type of slacks we only ever wore on holidays or for church, as well as an ugly knit sweater and a pair of bright blue sneakers with yellow stripes that I would gladly trade away $50, my stack of X-Men comic books, and whatever may be left of my Halloween candy, if only they could somehow fit my overgrown feet. I'd like to know what he's listening to, but the album's cover, within his reach there on the carpet, is blurred. In this snapshot moment, as my brother gazes intently at the ceiling, I wonder what he thinks will become of his life. I wonder if, already, there is some part of him that worries none of this will work out, that the world will open up for him like an empty box, closing itself up with him inside. I don't know which of our parents took this photograph, but I hope they had the decency to leave him there undisturbed, that he wasn't interrupted with calls for dinner or chores, or that I didn't run in from the other room, hounding him to join me in another game. Because what I want more than anything is for him to remain right where he is, alone with his music, his thoughts, before the last song is over, before the record slows to its inevitable standstill, and the needle jerks back abruptly into place, before the whole roughed world barges in again, leading him to where he has to go next.
Wow, Dr. Gardner, what a moving and personal story. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Tell me about your process for creating this piece.
Yeah, so the personal was certainly there from the beginning, and it was going to be the core of the piece. But when I teach, the kind of hand motion I use the most is sort of this, that you know, you have to be in close to your material, and then you have to step back further away. And so right from the start, I knew that I had to figure out how I was going to gain distance from the material. And that really came about through the focus on comic books, and through doing research about comic books. So when I first started working on the manuscript, I really wasn't writing the personal material. I was learning about comic books, reading books, getting things from interlibrary loan. I was taking down notes of terminology and things like that. I was looking at old comic books that I remembered from my youth. I was watching Marvel superhero movies. So that was sort of really where the book took shape, was first from that. And it was kind of easy to add in the more personal sections once I had that kind of scaffolding in place.
So I'm curious to get your perspective on this concept of creative work as research. Talk to me a little bit about the research side of this and the contribution that this type of work makes to society.
Oh, sure. So just as the research, like I said, it was kind of like where this manuscript started, but it also really came about in important moments of the composition process to move it forward. So the book is largely about comic books. My brother was also very much he loved classical music, and he played the piano. And there was a piece in particular that I listened to a lot, a video recording of him playing Debussy's Clair de Lune. And I knew I was gonna write about that piece of music as well, and I was looking into that song and found out that it's based on a poem by Paul Verlaine. And I also write poetry. I teach creative writing for a living, and it was an amazing sort of revelation, in ways kind of sad, that I didn't realize that possible connection until after my brother had passed away. But it was a way for me to kind of let myself more into the book. I could also talk about writing, which I love, and French symbolist poetry, right? And so it was about comic books, and then I found that, like, through these other connections, I could add other things. So I think of the work as a sort of braided structure. There's a thread about comic books, there's a thread about cancer, there's a thread about mental illness, there's a thread about music, and all of those I knew were important to the story of my brother and to the book. But I also had to figure out how those threads intertwined. And research was helpful in that. So, for instance, I learned that India ink, which is the preferred medium for cartoonists, is actually used in pathology laboratories to mark tumor recession margins. And in the book, that's a really kind of small moment, but for me as a writer, it was an epiphany. It was like this sort of like belief that like these threads really do go together, and in unexpected and interesting ways. And so I really felt like the research side of the project was deeply intertwined with the creative and the personal.
How do you hope that this work honors your brother's memory, and what do you want readers to take away as they go through this book?
Sure, the book's about comic books and superheroes and music, but beneath and above all of that, it's a book about grief, and my hope certainly is that readers would not only identify with that, but genuinely find something valuable in it to take back to their life and their experiences with grief. Especially anyone who has a family member who struggles with mental illness, or anyone who's lost a sibling at a relatively young age.
Dr. Gardner, thank you so much for sharing your work and your time with us. A unique research project in the Department of History is taking a closer look at the contributions of amputees in the development of medical technology.
So I found the Cassell hand as part of material culture research that I was doing on a project about changing attitudes and practices surrounding amputation and prosthetic technology in Germany in the 16th and 17th century. So I got wonderful images both of its exterior but also of its interior. So one of the biggest challenges of working with 16th century mechanical hands is you can't take them apart because you would break them. There was one object that one person took apart in the 19th century and it never worked right again. So in the 21st century, no one is going to let you do that. I had a 3D file that I had worked up, a virtual 3D design with the architect Ben Tolman, and I reached out to Chad Rose in mechanical engineering to see whether or not he might be interested in working with me on seeing whether or not this is a printable thing that we can move forward with.
Dr. Hawes approached me to try and create a physical prototype of, based on scans she made of an artifact from the early modern period. And so the idea is the artifact is locked away in some museum, but we want to feel it, touch it, use it, experiment with it here in Auburn. So we need to recreate it in some semi-realistic or some sort of way of honoring and mimicking the function of what we believe the original would have been like.
We're working towards a physical copy of a hand that we can do experiments with. And we can't do those kind of experiments with the original artifact.
I have a background in designing and 3D printing wearable robots for the hand and models of the hand for robotics. So I was just interested to get involved.
It's not just having a physical copy trying to replicate something, it's having a physical copy that we can experiment with and look a bit more about how does it operate in sort of a world of objects that is supposed to sort of be this an interface between the human body and the world around the human body.
So there's obviously a historical value for us to understand how the history of wearable robotics has changed over time, how humans have interacted with mechanical systems and printed parts or fabricated parts. There's also the aspect of learning how individuals with disabilities have interacted with prosthetic devices over time. So it's important that people with these specific domain insights about mechanical design, human-robot interaction or human-mechanical interaction, how the human body conforms to mechanical pieces and mechanical objects. That domain of insight can interact with a domain of insight that says, they can show us about what kind of technologies existed at the time, what were the context of their usage, and who could have interacted with them, what were the people like who created them and used them. So that disconnect between what happened in the 16th century and what's happening in the 21st century is bridged by that interdisciplinary collaboration.
Faculty in the arts have performed in some of the nation's most prestigious venues. Jeremy Samolesky is no exception. The professor of piano and head of keyboard studies in the College of Liberal Arts is one of only 1,600 Steinway artists in the world, among greats like Billy Joel, Harry Connick Jr., and Lang Lang. To continue our celebration of research and creativity, joining us from the stage of the Wolters Theater, the J. and Susie Gouge Performing Arts Center, Dr. Jeremy Samolesky. Professors and students in the College of Liberal Arts have been hard at work on various projects related to the Bloody Sunday incident that occurred in Selma, Alabama on March 7, 1965. Footage of that attack appeared on national television and served as a catalyst for Americans to rally behind the civil rights movement. And Auburn University faculty and students are doing their part to learn all they can about that fateful day.
What you see behind me is what we consider one of the most important historic sites in the United States. It's where the conflict on Bloody Sunday on March 7th, 1965 occurred. We don't believe there's a definitive list of marchers and where they were on Bloody Sunday. This fall we're going to work with honours students and with supporters in the city of Selma to try and get a more comprehensive list and to tell the story of what happened on Bloody Sunday in a lot more detail. We decided in the College of Architecture to go ahead and survey the site to start with, and we used laser scanners, digital total stations, drone imagery to do a comprehensive survey. The trick to getting data or digital data on what was here in 1965 involves using sophisticated photogrammetry software and analysing historic images to get the 3D positions of the buildings to start with, and then adding in things like the police cars, the other vehicles, and the final thing that we were able to do is to locate the positions of those brave marchers.
And so people still today come to Selma to look at the bridge and reflect upon how far we've come and how far we still have to go. And the bridge is sort of an excellent metaphor for that, right? I mean, in some ways, we've come a long way since 1965 in Selma, but in other ways, we still have a long way to go to achieve all the dreams that those, on that first day, those 600 marchers, what they were marching for. So this is what Auburn is supposed to be doing, is coming out into community and being engaged, sort of civic-minded scholarship, and apply our talents to bring resources to a community like Selma and to enrich our own lives. I learn something every time I come to Selma, about humanity and civil rights and things like that. And so it's good to be out in the community.
Graduate fellows Mikkel Carter and Laura King continue this work, interviewing Bloody Sunday foot soldiers through a National Park Service-funded oral history project. That work is part of a new initiative co-directed by Professor Elijah Gaddis and Keith Hebert called Community Histories Workshop. It's designed to promote synergy within the community while providing graduate students with high-quality, real-world experience. You can read more about their work and other important stories from the College of Liberal Arts next month when an all-new and this year all-digital edition of the Perspective magazine is released. We enjoyed moments from a masterful theater performance earlier in our celebration, but there's so much more that goes into creating a theater production that most patrons never see. We're going behind the stage at the Peet Theater to see how research plays a role in the characters being brought to life in the costume shop.
We just finished the play Detroit 67, and it's about a brother and a sister who live in Detroit, and they have a speakeasy in their basement, and outside is the beginnings of the Detroit riot. So my role is the costume design professor here. I teach all of the costume design, costume history, stage makeup, costume construction classes here. So this season I'm doing Detroit 67, and then I'm going to do 12th Night. I'm working at the very end stages on a PhD in history, and my specialty is protest clothing of the 1960s. So this was not a giant stretch. I have an awful lot of research that's already been done on this. So to tackle it, I went back to all of the pictures I could find from Detroit in that summer of 1967 to see what people look like. And then I go to my costume history books to look and see where we are in history, what African Americans were wearing during that time, what they could get, what they could buy, and what this particular family would be able to buy. You read the script, you figure out, how much money they have, where they would have shopped, what they would have gotten. And then you go to the sources of Sears catalog. You could purchase from Sears catalog. You could purchase from department stores. However, at that time you could not try on the clothes. If you were African American, you go into a store, you may not try the clothes on. So a lot of their clothes are used clothes, you know, the Goodwill kind of clothes, and also not brand new clothes. And it's hot, and it's in the basement, and it's July. And so you have to take all of that into consideration. So then I make a giant thing called a costume plot. So that is every single actor in every single scene, how many times do they need to change the clothes. So this takes place over longer than a week, and so a lot of the time we tell time with clothes. So you change your clothes. So that's why one of the actors has 9 changes. So she changes her clothes. So we know it's morning, we know it's the middle of the night. It's like by what you're wearing in the clothes. So I'm helping to tell the story through the clothes for the audience, so they know right away what's going on through the clothes. The brother and sister have some friends who come over. One is a very flamboyant young man friend, just a little skeezy, just a little slick. And so he gets to wear some really fun clothes like a hot yellow suit. That's the hot yellow suit over there. And the girlfriend's name is Bunny, and she is the party girl, and she gets people coming to the speakeasy so that they can fill their basement with people so that they can make money. And that's how they make their money, is through these speakeasies. So she has to have lots of bright and fun clothes compared to what Shell wears, which are middle class, very staid, very conservative clothes. Take all this and present the costume plot to AK. These are when they have to change. I have a problem between this scene and this scene because there's like 30 seconds. I'm gonna have to change them totally in that 30 seconds. So just so we know, through the process, you're gonna have to give me time to change them. I show him all my research. And he's done his own research, and so he looks at all of my books and pictures that I bring him and patterns that I bring him, so he knows what I'm looking at. And then we decide, you know, what the characters are about. He talks about each one of them with me and who he's cast. And then I take tons of pictures of the cast members, and I go home and I draw. Next thing, I talk to my costume shop manager and say, this is what we want to do, and this is the amount of time we have to do it. So it's the first show of the year. We're just in the door. We're just teaching our students how to sew. So this is about our students learning how to do the process. So we have to think through, what can we make? What do we need to buy? What do we have upstairs that we can pull? And so we make lists. All right, we're able to make this amount of stuff. We're going to pull this amount of stuff. We're going to buy this amount of stuff. And this is how much money we have, how much time we have, and how much labor we have. So Caroline is a character who is a white girl who the brother and his friend pick up on a street corner, who she has been beat up, and it looks like she's going to die on the street corner. And they're like, we don't know what to do with her. This is like the middle of a riot. They're afraid. And so they take her home to rescue her. But she has a lot of secrets, and she has a story. They rescue her. The sister comes downstairs, is like, what the heck are you doing? This is dangerous for us to have a white girl here. Let's just drop her off at the hospital. If we drop her off at the hospital, everybody will know, and we'll be the ones that are in trouble. We are in trouble now because we have her here. So they're pretty much stuck with the situation until they can get the girl to leave. So the girl is afraid to leave. So she says, can I work for you? And they're like, you can work for us for 1 week, and then you got to get out of here. So she's wearing a very sparkly, cute, little tiny dress, wild, messed up hair, and the next time you see her, she is wearing the sister's middle class, very conservative shorts and shirt. And so that's what she's going to wear for the next 5 days in the show. until she comes up with enough tip money working at the speakeasy so that she says, I'm leaving, and she leaves. And the next time you see her, she's wearing this cute little tiny little red dress. Obviously she has money, she spent the money, she's ready to get on the bus, she's gonna go. I do not want you to come out singing and dancing the costumes, right? I don't want you to think about the costumes for its sing. I want you to think about the whole embodiment of that wonderful bunny character, and thinking of, like, you know, she's got tons of jewelry on and this wild wig and this very bright dress, but I wanted you to think about what a bright, fun bunny that was, not, I love your clothes.
As we get ready to close out this celebration, there is one more researcher we want to introduce you to. Dr. Haneen Ali is a Health Services Administration professor and is working on some innovative research to improve patient care and nurse efficiency in healthcare settings.
Imagine you're in the hospital. I know, not ideal, but say with me. You've just come out of a pretty rough surgery and you need to use the restroom. What do? You press the button to call a nurse and wait for them to arrive. There's only one problem. Another patient around the corner hit their call button first. They just need an aspirin for a headache. With the current hospital technology, time, not need, may be the determining factor as to who gets a nurse's attention first.
But it doesn't have to be that way. Thanks to innovative research being done at Auburn University, the future of patient care could be right on your wrist. I want to welcome you to the third episode of the Things You Didn't Know podcast, and joining me today is the very impressive and very busy Dr. Haneen Ali. She is an assistant professor in the Health Services Administration program at Auburn, and because that's not enough, she's also an assistant professor in the Industrial and Systems Engineering program. Dr. Ali, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
When I first heard of your work, I knew I had to get you on the podcast because what you're doing is really, really impressive and could really change how patient care works in hospitals and long-term care facilities. And I want to dig into that, but let's set the scene first. You noticed a problem with the current call light system in inpatient healthcare settings. Explain a little bit more about that.
So let's first define what is the call light system. The call light system is a bedside button that patients use to notify nurses about their needs or perceived needs whenever they need the nurse attention. So they press a button next to their beds and a notification will be sent to the nurse's station notifying them that this patient in this room needs attention or has a need. However, the call light system was described in literature as patients' lifeline because it is the major communication device or the major communication way that patients use to notify the medical staff or their care team about their needs. However, with how much important is the call light is to communicate patients' need, it was found that call lights are associated with many ergonomic issues and usability challenges, like lack of prioritization, lack of directional information. In some settings in healthcare, such as nursing homes, call lights are associated with more major usability issues, such as noise. Systems are kind of old because of lack of resources in those settings. So the system can handle only one alarm. So if there is another alarm or if there is a new alarm, this can overwrite the old alarm. There is no feedback information or feedback about a previous alarm.
So there's clearly a problem with the current system. Tell me about the solution that you've come up with to tackle this. Many technologies became available not only in healthcare but in all the other industries, and the main goal of introducing technologies is to reduce cost and also improve quality. For call light system, we did a previous work with nursing home settings where we designed a system, a smart communication system for residents of nursing homes and nursing staff in order to replace the traditional call light system. And hospital settings was always a future work to me until
until I was in one of the conferences. I was attending a conference and I was in like a hotel room where Alexa was employed in the room. So whenever, for example, the guest needs a towel, he'll say, Alexa, can I have a towel? 5 minutes later, someone will be knocking on the door, bringing the towel. That was an easy process. So why this is not implemented in healthcare? Because this can overcome like many of the physical challenges and language barriers in communication between patients and nurses. I came back from the conference. I sent an email to my team. We had a meeting. We invited some of the undergraduate students in my classes. They were participating in some of the research activities. And I always like to have them because they always bring like this fresh eyes and fresh ideas of things. We started brainstorming to recreate and redesign the call light system in hospital settings and create a system that is not only used for communicating patients' need, but also use the system to increase the patient satisfaction in the hospital. So we implemented the user-centered design technique, and we had several visits to the nursing school simulation lab where we looked at the rooms, we looked at the call light system implemented there. We mimicked patients and patients' bed, like how easy it is to access devices on the bedside, and we had a lot of iteration. I think we had 4 major iterations on our design. We met with nurses, we met with patients, we listened to their feedback, and we improved the design in 4 major steps. So the major design consists of 2 major groups of like technology. One is implemented in patient's room, and one is implemented for the nurses, for the use of nurses. So what we proposed in our design is to implement the technology that we use on daily basis with our children, with ourselves. Alexa, iPad, smart TV, smart light, and the patient can communicate their needs using Alexa. This way, the patient can communicate the exact need. So I need my pain medication, or I need to go to the bathroom, or I need a cup of water. The iPad also can be used to access the medical record. If they requested a medication, they can track where their medication is or where the nurse in process of getting them the pain medication. They can have access to the patient portal. The hospital can provide information about their medical condition, like educational videos. They can read the news. They can control the TV. They can control the lighting by technologies that are installed like around them. The device that we proposed for the nurse use as a smartwatch, where the nurse is receiving directly the communication or the notification to the smartwatch they are wearing. So all the notification will be sent to a system, and that system will prioritize all the notification based on the severity of the patient, the severity of the need, how fast the nurse is supposed to respond to that need, and the nurse will see like a list of requests that she needs to respond to.
So the podcast is called Things You Didn't Know, and so I've gotten pretty comfortable with knowing when I don't know something, and I actually called a family member that's a nurse, and I discussed your research with her, and she was really impressed with the concept and really thought it was a great idea. But she asked a question, and I want to pose it to you. You know, for some patients, needing to go to the bathroom is not a big deal at all. It's no bigger an issue for them than it is for you or me. But for other patients that maybe have just come out of a surgery or are a fall risk, that can be a much more urgent need. How does the system understand the complex medical histories of each patient that's being taken care of and understand how to prioritize their needs for the nurse?
So I will try to explain this with the simplest way I know. So each patient will be given a score, will be given a weight. Basically, that weight represents how severe the patient condition is, or how severe or how important the need is. So for example, a patient that has or had a major surgery, that patient will be given a higher weight, indicating that nurses should respond to this patient quickly. An elderly patient with a high risk of fall, for example, will be given also a high score, a high weight, indicating the need. A patient who is asking for a pain medication, that is, the score will be different than a patient asking for a cup of water, for example, right? So all those variables, in addition to the location of the nurse that we will know because of the smartwatch they are wearing. All those variables, in addition to the location of the nurse, the expected number of steps the nurse has to do, will be entered into an algorithm, and using a simulation model, the nurse will receive a list of requests, like a queue. You have to respond to this patient first, and then you have to respond to this patient first, including like the severity of patient's condition.
And so what I think is neat is this really innovative approach to patient care that we're talking about is not just an idea. You've actually developed a prototype and tested it in a simulated environment. Tell me about that.
So we designed a system. We designed and we built and we tested a similar system to nursing home settings. That system was intended to replace the traditional cold light system. We simulated a setting in the university where we used like different rooms, and we mimicked kind of a nursing home unit. We invited undergraduate students. We trained them on how to be nursing home residents. We assigned each one of them like a specific medical condition, and we trained them how to mimic that medical condition. We invited real CNAs and real LPNs from local nursing homes to try the traditional system that is being used in their nursing homes, and the smart system that we build. So we had a high fidelity prototype for our system, and they tested both. We collected information related to like number of steps nurses had to do, response time, overall satisfaction, how easy was for them to finish the task, how easy was for them, or the perception of easiness of using that system.
Obviously, you collected a ton of data during those trials. What did it show you? Did it kind of articulate that need for something like this to really change that entire system in healthcare settings?
So the data showed that there was a 40% reduction in response time for cold light from bedrooms, and around 55% reduction in response time to cold light from bathrooms, because in nursing homes and in hospital settings too, the cold light system is also installed in bathroom just in case if the patient or the residents needs help while they are using the bathroom. We also found that 29% of bed exit alarm were improved through communicating those alarms directly to the nurse using smartwatches.
So when you ran that trial with nurses and CNAs, you were actually able to pick up a couple of ideas to be able to incorporate that back into your study. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So in general, when engineers or designers like design a new system, they always have their thoughts, right? Or how they see the system, the final result of that system, or how the system will operate. But there is one major rule when you design a new system, is to get feedback and input from the end users. It's like at the end of the day, it's not going to be me who's gonna use that system in order to do my job. It's going to be nurses or CNAs or LPNs or patients. So it is important always to get feedback from the end users in order to be able to identify all the challenges they are facing and propose features and functions to overcome those challenges and provide them with a quality product that satisfy their needs at the end of the day.
This is all so incredibly interesting, but I want to know from you now, what's next? You've done all of these prototypes and trials and done this iterative process working on this project. So help us understand what comes next in your research.
So the next step, we are currently building a high fidelity prototype, and we have support from the nursing school to use the nursing school simulation lab to test that system. And we are going to follow the same steps we did with the previous design. We are going to recruit students, train the students how to mimic patients, and then we're going to recruit nurses or maybe nursing students and ask them to try the traditional system and the smart system and collect different measures in order to evaluate the smart system.
Well, Dr. Ali, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I think this was a really interesting conversation for our listeners to get to join us on. And I really look forward to seeing where your research goes from here. For all of our listeners, make sure you hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening on so that you never miss an episode of the Things You Didn't Know podcast. Also, while you're there, hit that 5-star button. It helps us more than you know. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Things You Didn't Know podcast.
What a day it has been. Thank you so much for joining us in celebrating research and creativity across the College of Liberal Arts. And we could continue for hours more, talking about all of the amazing things happening in every corner of this great institution. The work taking place in the College of Liberal Arts defines innovation. It defines creativity, and it defines the spirit of excellence that ties our instruction, outreach, and research efforts together. To each of our researchers, thank you for the work that you do to move our institution, our state, and this world forwards. On behalf of myself and the entire College of Liberal Arts, thank you for starting this day with us and joining in on this celebration. We'll see you next month when we release a new episode of the Things You Didn't Know podcast.